Thank you, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, for gathering here with us to celebrate Canada Day, Canada's history, and our history of Canadian Chinese railroad workers' contributions to Canada. This event is in collaboration with the Foundation to commemorate the Chinese railroad workers in Canada, who are also holding a commemoration in Toronto at this very moment.
感謝大家嘅來臨，今日係加拿大國慶日，祝加拿大嘅歷史，特別係紀念修建加拿大鐵路來工嘅貢獻。呢個紀念儀式係紀念加拿大鐵路工人基金會合作舉辦。
My name is Winnie Ohai Wong, one of the young directors of Calgary Chinatown Association.
I'm Peter. 我係嘉誠開平會館嘅會長。
And we now invite you to stand for the national anthem.
請大家一齊起立唱國歌。
Thank you. Please be seated.
多謝大家請。
Before we begin, we would like to give a land acknowledgement that we are on the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi, Blackfoot, and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta.
以上係尊敬葉志文嘅應。
We would also like to give a special thanks to the many community organizations who have supported this event.
我哋衷心感謝以下等社區機構對今次紀念活動嘅支持。
The United Calgary Chinese Association and all of its 26 Chinatown organizations.
卡城中華協會以及26個唐人街社團。
Whom along with Calgary Chinatown Development Foundation and Boside Manor provided invaluable technical support today.
以及唐人街發展基金會何番地下提供嘅技術支持。
Simlok Society.
善樂社。
Action Chinese Canadian Together Foundation.
卡城華營聯合行動基金會。
Diversity.
卡城華人服務中心。
Calgary Chinatown Lions Club and their Young Wheel Club.
卡城華埠獅子會同埋青年獅子會。
Ji Hao Oakton Benevolent Association.
卡城志孝督親公所。
Mr. Bill Kwan.
關啟陽。
Mr. John Kwan.
關振修。
Mr. Ming Sitong.
司徒明。
And also thank you to Sensen Aoyang and Mr. Ding Dat Wong.
仲係多謝歐陽深深女士同埋黃景德先生佢哋嘅音樂班組。
And last but not least, welcome to our government officials, city councilors, MLAs and MPs for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today.
最後多謝今日來臨嘅市議員、省議員、聯邦議員。
Thank you everyone for being here.
多謝大家。
Please now stand again for a minute of silence to commemorate the thousands of Chinese railroad workers.
以下我哋靜為1分鐘嚟表達我哋嘅鐵路工程。
Our future is what we learn from our past, and our first speaker is representing our future generation. A student of the Calgary Chinatown Chinese Private School, please welcome Sophie McKinnon.
而家我哋請第一位演講嘉賓卡城華人私立學校學生黃雅小姐嚟。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sophie, as you already said. I learned a little about Chinese railroad workers' stories from my social teacher, and today I am very grateful to have the opportunity to learn more about the important yet seldom told part of Canada's history. Chinese railroad workers are the most valuable players in building Canada's transcontinental railway, and their contribution to Canada is far beyond just building the railway. The railway connects the east and west of Canada geographically and unites Canada politically. In 1871, British Columbia became Canada's 6th province, a key point that persuaded the province to enter confederation was Canada's promise to build a railway to connect the Pacific coast to the rest of the country. One of the hardest parts of building the Canadian Pacific Railway was cutting through the Rocky Mountains. Between 1881 and 18 over 17,000. About 700 of them were killed in industrial accidents, largely due to unsafe work. Chinese workers were given the most dangerous tasks and paid less than the white workers. It is estimated that the use of Chinese workers lowered the cost of the railway by $3 to $5 million, or $84 to $140 million now. The completion of Canada's transcontinental railway in 1885 opened up a lucrative trade route with the port of Vancouver, connected to the rest of Canada by rail. Silk trains ruled the rails between 1887 and the early 1930s. The speedy airtight trains carried bales of raw silk from Japan and are priority over all other rail traffic. The valuable cargo was loaded in Vancouver and rushed to Toronto, and then on the silk mills of the eastern United States. A bale of raw silk could easily fetch more than $800 in the 1920s. With about 470 bales to the car, a full train load was worth upwards of $6 million or $87 million today. To travel by train through the Canadian Rockies remains one of life's sublime pleasures. And for most new immigrants who arrived in Canada prior to the 1960s, a long train ride to their eventual destination was among the most vivid of their early experiences. Their first impressions were often of days of travel through seemingly endless expanses of forest and prairie. Even though Chinese railroad workers made major contributions to the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, these 17,000 Chinese immigrants have been largely ignored by history. And only until 2006, the settlement was reached, 171 years after the first head tax was placed. Thank you so much for the opportunity to pay tribute to Chinese railroad workers, to remember and acknowledge their legacy. They are the true unsung heroes.
Next is Mr. Sidney Wu, Founding Director of Calgary Chinatown Association. He is very much a mentor to both Peter and I, and as well as Jean, who's in the back with tech, as well as our young director group, guiding us to get more involved in our community, teaching us about many philosophies of Chinese culture and welcome.
一位係我哋家庭開平會館創辦人胡宇業先生，佢哋係我哋年班團隊年青團隊嘅導師，亦都引導我哋更多參與社區活動，給我哋好多嘅中國文化、哲學、歷史同埋新舊。請邀請胡先生。
After helping to build Confederation, Chinese railroad workers who survived found themselves unemployed, while Canada imposed the Chinese head tax in the same year. Some spread eastward to the prairies in central Canada. Everywhere they went, they faced racism, but they worked hard as employees or business owners. They helped build the local economy and established the foundation of the Chinese Canadian community. Today, Chinese Canadians, and indeed Canada, benefited from the labor and sacrifices. Taiping is a city in southern China, famous for its people going to the Gold Mountain. Taiping workers built a unique form of buildings called Diaolao, incorporating Chinese and Western architectural principles. Today, these 100-year-plus buildings are UNESCO heritage sites. 17% of early Chinese Canadians were from Taiping. Some of them were CPR workers. Since then, Taiping people continued to come. The name Canada had long been well known in Taiping. I had a grand uncle who came 100 years ago. In the 1940s, a group went back to Taiping to retire. They built a village and called it Canada Village. In the 1950s, all of them and their families came back to Canada. The village had been empty since then, but is preserved and still called Canada Village. The tie between Taiping and Canada is long and Eve. It is part of our culture to remember and give thanks to our ancestors, which we're here to do. Another part of that culture is continuance. It is not enough just to remember. We have an obligation to pick up the torch, to continue building our community and our country, Canada. While labor work is noble, we have opportunities now to expand our roles in other fields, like the professions, corporations, governments, and civic leadership. One example of civic leadership is the daughter of Taiping, Teresa Wu Pao, whom we are very proud of and is a role model for our young to follow. An example of a young leader is our MCs today, Peter Huang, President of Calgary Chinatown Association, and Winnie Huang, Director. Another young leader is Jean Huang, the Secretary. She's working behind us at the building here to live stream this event. Credit also goes to Kenneth Chen, Director, who originated the idea of having a commemoration in Calgary, and Maggie Wu, Treasurer, who liaised with the community and took care of numerous details. Support from the Calgary community has been beyond our expectations. This gave inspiration and energy to the organizers who worked tirelessly, long hours in the last 2 months. We really appreciate the support and your attendance today. Without them, this event would be meaningless. Thank you all.
Next, we will welcome Mr. Les Louis, Vice President of Sinlock Society.
Good morning, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Les Louis, Vice President of Sinlock Society. We're very honored to be part of the ceremony. Sinlock was established in 1968 to preserve Calgary's Chinatown. The name Sinlock means happiness through good works, and we have strived to preserve the Chinese history. The sculpture behind me, directly behind me across the street, called In Search of Gold Mountain, was sculptured by Chu Osan from 15 tons of granite. The monument was to honor the Chinese history within Canada. And the monument over at the Wall of Navy on the other side, that one's is dedicated to the history of Chinese immigration to bring recognition to the Chinese pioneers who entered Canada in hopes of a new beginning. Sinlock Park is owned by the city of Calgary. Sinlock has spent a lot of time, money, and effort to make this park what it is today for everybody to enjoy and be proud of. Thank you very much for this time.